dude spellings.
Absolutely.
That's why we busted out the video camera, because we're in person now and then.
Yeah.
The beautiful city of Austin. Thanks for showing me around, getting me the breakfast tacos there earlier this year. And now you're in town for what big reason?
The Sacramento Speedgolf Open.
Bringing the speed golfers together from across the country for this wonderful event. But first, we have some issues to discuss. We're very warmed up right now because we just turned the mic and the camera's on, but we've been talking for a while about some big picture items, which is, I think, your specialty, your expertise is just having your hand in everything and seeing what's going on. And one thing that occurs to me is like, we're living and breathing this stuff every single day, you and I, right? We're in the business, you're a coach, I've been, in the health scene and before that an athlete forever. So my life was about health optimization and keeping up on all the latest, greatest of diet, training methods, getting more sleep, and then surrounding us, our loved one, friends and family, and even ourselves in our own lives, there's so many challenges to doing what's right and what's believed to be the healthiest, believed to be now, who knows what 10 years from now will bring. But that's kind of where I think we could pick it up. It's like, geez, what do we do? It's almost overwhelming.
Definitely. So, like I discussed earlier, one of the things I've recently started was teaching a online health and wellness program. And I specifically wanted to target people that are not in this space. And it's definitely easy to get inside the bubble. It's like once you have whatever awakening that you have that leads you to this lifestyle, everybody listens to the same podcasts and watches the same videos on YouTube and reads the same books, and it's easy to just kind of stay in this bubble where we're all exposed to the same information, the same people, whatnot. And I've always thought, because I was definitely not in that bubble, that I always thought that I really, like, my passion is to bring this information to people who would not otherwise be exposed to it. And mostly people like I was, which is, the lifetime office worker, doing the right thing, holding down your office job, supporting your family. And, it's so easy to get caught up in trying to live the American dream and support your family that you lose sight of the fact that you have lost your health and that you can't bend over anymore, or you can't squat down anymore, or your eyesight is failing, or all the myriad multiple things that happen when you're basically a human zoo animal inside an office for 80% of the time or whatever.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one, is the sacrifice required just to make a living and get on the road and commute and sit in a typical office environment is a huge compromise to health. And then I think, there's a compelling argument that if you put the time and energy and the investment into eating healthier, getting some exercise, doing some stretching and breathing in the morning before you head off to work, taking these more chunks of time, you're going to have more energy and be more productive. But it's so difficult to kind of embrace that and put it into action because you're tired, fried, and burnt out, and all you want to do when you get home is crash on the couch, watch your Netflix, hit the pint of Ben & Jerry's. And so it's like this vicious cycle downward.
It's the Matrix.
It's the Matrix.
Right. So, no, this is how I refer to it. It's like you are literally plugged into the Matrix when you are stuck in that cycle where you mindlessly go to work, you do your job all day under artificial light and staring at a screen. You never see the real environment, which is sunshine and outdoors. And then you get home, and because of your stressful day, what do? You want to plug in to Netflix, TV, YouTube, whatever it is, but you just want to chill. And it's not a conscious lifestyle, right? It's a subconscious plugging into this alternate reality where even the nutritional information is what did Morpheus say? Like the wool pulled over your eyes so that you don't see the truth, you know?
Well, there's so many addictive properties to the things we do, including the food reward system. I'm just listening to Robert Lustig's new book. He's the sugar crusader from UC San Francisco. He's got a new book called The Hacking of the American Mind. He talks about this this dopamine reward system that we're all wired for. It's a wonderful survival instinct, right? We have to get up and kill an animal and eat it, so we experience that immediate pleasure of an indulgent meal. But today, the corporate interests, especially if you want to get conspiracy about it, they've kind of hacked this operation so that we are getting more and more lured into the immediate pleasure hits, like the rat on the wheel, getting the cocaine and doing it over and over again. And so some of the pathways that give us this immediate dopamine burst happen to be sugar is a big one, right? Alcohol, prescription drugs, illegal drugs, street drugs, porn, sex,
notifications on your social media,
and hyperconnectivity. And so you throw that all into the mix, and pretty much no one I know has escaped this entirely. But if we go back a few generations and look at our lifestyle patterns, we were talking about America's youth. We both have kids in the teenage to early adult age. And what were we like back then? I was hanging out at the beach at UC Santa Barbara, riding my bicycle, doing running, doing all this sporty outdoor activity, but also sitting around and talking with my peers for an hour and a half, just talking. Maybe we're on the beach, maybe we're walking down the street to go, get a meal where we'd sit and have, and no interruptions, no screens, nothing, dive bombing the casual interaction that was more supportive of happiness and contentment, which are hormones like serotonin, oxytocin. We hear about these things when we're talking about healthy love relationships where you're holding hands walking down the beach. You're not getting a dopamine hit like you are during sexual intercourse, but you're feeling that connection and all these things that lead to rich, rewarding life in the long term. And if you dangle that carrot in front, it's going to have a more powerful pull than holding hands walking down the beach. So we compare that to the widespread addiction to porn or to alcohol, sugar, things like that. They're going to hijack sitting in your kitchen and making a meal, going to the farmer's market, shopping for the foods, chopping them up, and making this delicious meal. The ice cream's going to win out over that. And wow, now we're victims of our own physiology and the incredible skill that the corporate interests have to. The social media is a great example. It's like these apps are designed to lure you in and cause you to spend more time than you originally wanted to. And these are very brilliant people behind the scenes doing the assorted mechanisms that keep you basically addicted.
Oh, these, make no mistake, man, these corporations, they're hiring PhDs in psychology to tell them how the brain works so that they can engineer their products to make you stay on them. That's a fact. Man, so much content and just awesome information, what you just said.
Yeah, I did a podcast about, there's something called the Center for Humane Technology. I did a brief show on Get Over Yourself podcast, a breather show about the guy who started this. I forget his name. He used to be a engineer of some note at Google, dealing with development. And now he started this nonprofit. You can go look at their website, and there's all kinds of suggestions and a movement in the direction of compelling these big platform people to create a more reasonable user experience rather than a great example is like Facebook. Hey, we met on the subway, and I'm gonna go add you as a friend because it was nice to meet you in real life. And so I go onto Facebook and say, type this person's name in, find him, and then add him as a friend. And in the act of doing that, I'm going to get an alert of 17 friend requests, and they do that on purpose so that you can't just engage and disengage. You're sucked in.
Right.
Same with food. You can't eat just one bite of Pringles because they've dusted that with addictive properties like the gliadin protein in wheat, Dr. William Davis wheat belly. So we're getting served up everywhere we look with things that are truly short-circuiting our ability to be happy and content over the long term.
Totally. I want to go back to something you said earlier. It's on the same lines of wheat belly. Dr. Robert Lustig. That guy is phenomenal, and he was really one of the first people I was exposed to once I decided to start looking into the food and making a change. Probably the first video I saw of his was this video on YouTube called "Sugar: The Bitter Truth," and
it's a documentary, like a.
No, it's just it's him giving a presentation at
cool.
like UC Davis or somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's jam packed with tons of facts and information, and everything from how sugar is processed in the liver very similarly to alcohol, and how fructose and the fatty liver from fructose looks just like fatty liver from alcoholism. And, he has lots of information in there about how the corporate food industry is obfuscating what is really in their food, and how there's 56 names for sugar so that you don't know that there's sugar in the food. And it's just it's a really, really good primer for anybody who wants to kind of get into the
bitter truth.
The bitter truth, yeah.
Oh, I like his line from the book Hacking the American Mind, where the guy who originally invented Coca-Cola, the original formula had sugar, caffeine, alcohol, and cocaine all mixed in the formula. And the guy who invented it, I forget his name, he was a morphine addict.
Oh, wow.
And so he was, a guy who was trying to make money to support his habit, or create the wonderful concoction to get his fix in the 1800s. And he sold the formula for like, $500 or $250 because he was penniless, and he died a disgrace. You go to the Coca-Cola Museum, there's no mention of the guy's name, the guy who came up with the original formula. And then the government kind of tightened things up. So between 1886 or whatever, and 1903, when the final Coca-Cola product was brought to the world, they took out everything except for the sugar and the caffeine. They took out the alcohol and the cocaine due to lawmaking. But wow, here we are today with it's almost like the movie analogy was appropriate, because I'm shaking my head because I have that grasp of three something decades clear of technology. I mean, I remember dialing up. Some of you viewers, listeners might not know what I'm talking about, but you had to make the concerted effort to tie up your phone line, hit the button, and it would make the funny noise, and then you'd get connected to the internet, and you could check your email, and it was so great, and then you'd hang up and do whatever you're doing.
And if you wanted to download one picture, it would take like a minute and a half to download one photo.
But it, and I've been writing books all this time, before and after, right? And so today, like, I can do a great job gathering research in an extremely rapid amount of time, and put together concise thoughts, and pull anything I need to, and anything I've ever heard or thought about, I can type it into my Evernote program if I took a note about it at some point in my life, or type it into Google and find it and lock in and have this great experience of putting together the best content we've ever had a chance to. But I also have my email inbox open and pulled over there for some reason during the day when I'm supposed to be focusing, or pulled over into an article that I'm looking up, and then I got drawn into that. And so it makes for a haphazard experience. And I'm thinking about the old days when I'd like pack up and ride my bike over to the library with a bunch of papers and notes and print books, or go in the library and get print books. And the experience of compiling information and writing a book was so different. And what's better, what's worse? Maybe for me it's worse now because my brain is fried, and I know we're advancing culture and society with the internet and the free communication, but I think it's time to pay attention to the drawbacks and do something about it with Dude's course. What's it called?
Primal Reboot.
Primal Reboot, and you're kind of targeting like co-workers in an office environment because you work with people in a real setting. It's not like a health company, it's a technology operation. So you're dealing with real live people every day fighting the battle, huh?
Yeah. So I want to get to my course in a minute, but I also want to address what you said about technology and how it's a double-edged sword. And I think this has always been the case. You know, if you look back at our grandparents, right, they were like, oh, the TV is the death of America, the death of, intelligence, it's the boob tube, it's the idiot box. And, there's a lot of truth in that, but basically old people like us are saying the same thing about social media and whatnot these days. And the truth is that all technology throughout human history is a double-edged sword, right? I mean, just like the rest of everything in life. And, something like gunpowder or dynamite, right? I mean, Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, and he's obviously the creator of the Nobel Prize, and the whole reason that he created the Nobel Prize is because actually they incorrectly published an obituary about him. His brother died, and the newspaper wrote an obituary about him instead of his brother, and they called him the Merchant of Death or something like that.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
He's having a conscience. He opens up the paper. Oh my.
Yeah, and I mean, this, he was fabulously wealthy because dynamite's so useful, and interestingly enough, Alfred Nobel's father invented the landmine, right? So like these people are, they have this legacy of, it's definitely
explosive devices.
Well, a double-edged sword, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You could argue that the landmine is one of the most evil inventions ever, or you could argue that it has, allowed small countries to protect themselves from invaders, or like everything's a double-edged sword, which is my point. And something as useful as dynamite, yes, millions of people died, but there's no way you could have built the Panama Canal or Hoover Dam unless you had these tools. And so today, we're kind of faced with this similar choices where we need to, and just like anything in life, being conscious about how we use the tools is what's going to be the most beneficial for us.
So, generally speaking, what would you do as a parent when you're armed with all this information, wisdom, perspective, and you have kids coming of age in the digital age? And I found myself fighting these battles with my kids. They're now adults and out of the house, right? But I realized that the excessive screen use and the presentation of unhealthy, nutrient deficient, toxic foods were two things that were, breaking my heart on a daily basis. And so that I had to get in their face and fight this battle. But you can't really control it at a level. So if parents are listening, if you have kids ages 0 to 7, start to loosen your belt buckle a little bit, because right now you have almost total control over whatever, and then you're going to get 7 to 14, and then you're going to get 14 to 21. So it's interesting looking back. Like, I don't know, do you have any insights of what works and what doesn't work?
Certainly, I'm no parental expert.
What works really well is lecturing. Long duration lectures. I learned as a soccer coach, we had multiple coaches. We had this, really enthusiastic team of the traveling soccer team. We wanted to take it to the next level from the recreation team. And they had tryouts and picked these kids who were really into it, And then we'd have these practices where I'd see something and I'd want to address the team at the break, right? And then so would the other coach want to address the team about something else. And then the third coach would want to, put in a rah-rah at the end or whatever. And I realized, like, if I had a stopwatch, it would have been nice in my hand, because there's like a 40-second window of attention span for a 13-year-old youth in the middle of an athletic practice. And that's all you got. That's your chance. And if you keep talking after that, you totally lose them. And I assume it's probably the same in the household when you're trying to pick your spots there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, what you always hear from the experts is, model the behavior that you want your children to emulate.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
And it's tall order. It's tough.
I mean, it shouldn't be that tough if you're a parent. It's like, frickin' do it, man. I mean, and if you're not, oh my gosh, I remember like when our kids were, coming into the age where, there's marijuana on high school campuses now. Surprise, surprise. And if you're having fun at parties and engaging in this or that thing that you don't want your kid to do, I mean, I'm like, forget it. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, definitely true.
Even if they're not there, these things kind of ooze back into, like, kids are so smart and so perceptive, and they can see right through someone who says, do as I say, not as I do,
So let's bring this back and make it really real. So the hardest place for that for me is the phone.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So when our kids were young, my ex-wife wanted to get them phones as soon as they were in middle school, basically, and I thought that was a little bit too young, but you got the double-edged sword where, we can put this app on it and we can track it. And
They'll be safe.
When they walk to school, we can see where they are, and we can see if they, took a detour on the way home from school, and all this stuff. And you can.
This man was offering me candy on 37th Street.
Yeah, exactly. But even just very, very practical terms, like
fair point.
If you want to text your child and tell them, hey, I'm going to be 30 minutes late picking you up, it's very convenient. But one thing I noticed is that it's really hard for me to dole out advice on social media when I'm on social media, and again, it's got its pluses, it's got its minuses. But one area where I would say I might have had a modicum of success with my kids is with some of the lifestyle stuff like diet and circadian biology. My 16-year-old goes to bed early. I think a lot of that is the function of her being fairly introverted and just being in touch with how tired she is. Teenagers tend to sleep a lot, and she's, instead of deciding to sleep in super late, which she does a lot, but during the week when she knows she's got to get up early for school, she likes to go to bed early. And then, like I mentioned to you earlier, she's also, of course, the teenagers, they don't like to admit that I know anything that they don't know, or that I have any kind of knowledge that might be correct. But she's let her guard down a couple times and sent me text messages and said, hey, what do you think about this article on biphasic sleep or blue light? And she's got a blue light blocking app on her phone because we've talked about it, and she values her sleep. So
yeah, I also sit back and reflect that I think generally, like, here's the age of the helicopter parents, the college admissions bribery scandal, thinking that we can orchestrate everything. And my insight is that we probably have less influence than we think we do across the board. And there's some individuality component of each human on the planet where they're walking their own path. And no matter what their environment is, I mean, peer group is arguably, not arguably, but some research says, I don't know if I agree or disagree, but that they become more important than the parents from ages 10 to 17. And it's all about the peers and all that. Whether that's, let's say that's true, your parents still have a lot of influence, your family setting, but I think there's this X factor where, the kid's just gonna be on a certain path because of maybe there's some innate things there, their genetics, their biology, and then the things that, they adapt to or that cause attract their interest or their passion, and it's totally random, like.
Well, I wouldn't say it's totally random, only because I tend to believe in, like a higher power or cosmic consciousness or whatever you want to call it. Like, you hear this phrase that people say all the time, everyone has their cross to bear, right? And it's true. And, you see kids, even, when I was a kid, my brother and I grew up in the same household, and we have different outlooks on different topics, sometimes wildly different outlooks, even though we had the same parenting, lived in the same household, heard the same admonitions from our parents and whatnot. And I think that part of the hero's journey, right, is you awake enough to realize that you have this programming from your childhood and that you took away certain things, and that when you become an adult, you get to decide if you want to keep those things or not. Like, that's really the hero's journey, right, that is written about in mythology and movies like Star Wars and The Matrix and whatnot. It's like you, at some point, you have to take ownership over your life and your agency, and decide that, you know, whatever happened in the past is in the past, and you get to be the creator of your future.
I guess you don't have to. It'd be a nice suggestion.
Well, you can stay plugged into the Matrix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief, the incredible insight that I can't stop thinking about, that science validates this idea that 95 to 99% of the time we're operating from our subconscious, and that consists of these programming that in many ways flawed childhood programming from ages 0 to 6. That's when we're an open book, a sponge, and we absorb all these messages,
right,
and form our view of the world, and then we just play it out with reactive behavior, subconscious, rather than the opposite would be being mindful. You're into a contentious conversation and you get triggered and you react and you say stuff that you don't mean, or that you've said for years and years in response when you feel attacked or defensive. And so to kind of awaken to the possibility that we're a victim of our flawed subconscious programming is pretty heavy. And what is it? We think 30,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are identical to yesterday's thoughts, and 70 to 80% of the thoughts are negative. I don't think I'm exactly right on those stats, but it's just like we're just walking around with fears, worries, anxieties, a tape running in our head that was largely uploaded to us from 0 to 6.
Yeah, so that dynamic that you described is kind of like what Joe Dispenza talks about in the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. You're familiar with that?
That's
book?
good. Oh man.
So basically, the gist is like exactly what you said. You know, you have these constant thoughts every day, and those thoughts create your reality. And what you thought yesterday reinforces what you're going to think today. And so, if you want to break the habit of whatever cycle is happening in your life that you want to change, you got to change those thoughts.
That's why speed golf is so great.
Totally.
Because you're standing over, even better than regular golf, but golf is a great sport for this too, and any sport for that matter.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've often said to, years ago I drew this analogy between golf and snow skiing, because what I realized even like as a teenager is what you believe about the outcome is, it's everything about what actually ends up happening, right? So if you're standing at the top of a double black diamond run and you're looking down at these rocks and moguls and cliffs,
I'm in over my head. Oh crap!
Yeah, if you have
how dangerous.
If you have one doubt, right? Oh, will I be able to ski this? You're done, right? You have to be standing at the top, looking at what's in front of you, going, I got this, and it makes all the difference. Same with the golf shot, you know, like we were saying earlier, when you come up to a shot and you're playing slow golf, and you got all this time to second guess yourself and introduce doubt and all that stuff. Yeah, you're like, 30% success on that shot. But in speed golf, when you come up and it's just so quick that you don't have time to second guess, you're like, oh, I just got to hit this kind of shot, and you don't judge it.
Right.
You do it.
Maybe that's where some of the magic is, because for listeners unfamiliar, many players, when they're playing these speed golf tournaments, this crazy sport where you run through the course at high speed, you only have half of your clubs, and you're basically rushing through a sport that's supposed to be super deliberate and technique oriented. But what happens is many of the players, if not most, play as good or better. They shoot a score that's around the same as when they're spending all day out there with their caddy and their wind and their yardage finder that tells them exactly, you know, what to do with each shot. And it's almost unexplainable, except for you just made a nice attempt where you're just out of your, you're out of that over analytical mind where you're subject to all the negative thoughts and beliefs that you've stored in there.
And you don't give yourself time to judge yourself.
I wonder how that would work, like in the workplace setting where you just speak whatever's on your mind.
Well, I think there you got to be real careful not to do what you were talking about earlier about being reactive rather than responsive, right? Because so much of that flawed programming is so ingrained that you're triggered, right? And you just you get defensive and say whatever that's not true, or whatever it is, instead of reflecting and deciding that instead of taking the reflexive response that you've been programmed with, that you're going to be more thoughtful about it and respond with something maybe that's more productive
and make for a nicer, more respectful workplace, and building that equity on your team so that everybody respects each other and their voice feels heard. But I'm also thinking about, I think it was Ben Franklin or some other people that would make a practice of inviting their enemies or their rivals to join them in sort of a cabinet-like setting or a trusted group of advisors. And I know some of the leading business legends of modern times would do the same thing. They bring in a contrarian and want to hear from that person. And I think if you can rise up to this level where, let's say, your lifelong buddies that are going to tell you the straight scoop without that filter that's so common and I guess so important in day-to-day life when you're engaging in all these different levels. And I think there's a lot of value to that. I remember my former training partner, Weaver, he's the late Don Weaver. He was a great amateur triathlete, trained with him for many years, and he had no filter on his mouth. A lot of people thought he was a jerk, didn't like training with him because he was such a pop-off and he'd make arrogant comments or whatever. But if you get to know him and get through that kind of tough guy exterior, he would give you the straight scoop. And I remember him kind of telling me that I wasn't as good as I used to be, that I was falling off. And it was the hardest thing to hear because most people are giving me kind, expressive, supportive comments. Sure. You can do it. Oh, it sounds like you had an encouraging race where, I had a good swim, but a crappy bike and a decent run. So if I can put those pieces together, and I'd tell this lie in my mind rather than seeing it for what it was, which was, I'm at the end of my career, I'm getting slower, I'm getting my ass kicked, and I'm on my way out. I've already reached my peak. But if someone else tells it to you, that has a strong impact, a stronger impact than 50 people patting you on the back and supporting you. Because maybe 37 of those people have a different thought that they're too afraid to say to you.
Or don't want to hurt your feelings.
Don't want to hurt your feelings. And I think now, we're both in like life transition phase from, departing from long marriages and moving on into the next phase of life. And to get through these kind of things, you require that kind of support rather than the fakey, everything's okay, and we're going to go out and talk about the UT hook 'em horns, and are they going to win some more? Oh, that's the white rainbows. Go Hawaii, they have a pretty good football team. There's the horns. Yeah, but I mean, you can fill up, especially today, I think, you can fill up your entire brain all the way up to the top, your entire day, just dealing with nonsense bullshit that doesn't really, all it does is pass the time rather than get deep.
Totally. Have you read The Four Agreements?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so what you just...
Have I read it? I live it every day.
Oh, excellent. Well, what you just...
Be impeccable with your word.
Yes.
Always do your best. Don't take things personally, and don't make assumptions out of correct order. But
yeah, but point is, what you just said reminded me, like those are the two flip sides of the coin are be impeccable with your word, right? So like your friend, say what you mean, right? Tell the truth. But then the flip side, if you're the one receiving it, don't take it personally.
Right. So then if we just put those two in play, I love that. So if the two people can put each of those in play back and forth, how wonderful. And then also reminding the important elaboration of be impeccable with your word. Don Miguel Ruiz says be impeccable with your word to yourself too.
Nice.
So if I'm standing in front of a mirror with that athletic example going, I think what's going on here is I'm seeing the writing on the wall. Same with people who get fired from their job. Oh, I'm sorry. Not to make light of it, but I'm an expert at getting fired. I got fired 3 times in 6 years. I worked 2 years for the white man, 3 times in a row, and after the third one, I'm like, I don't think this is going to work out in general. I think I need to, I don't think I'm going to fit in. But getting fired is, for most people, a traumatic experience, and they can go meet their friend at Starbucks and say, yeah, if you could put me into, your LinkedIn group and put out a good word for me. Oh, sure, I will. Pfft, you lazy ass, you got fired because you blank, blank, blank. But, if you got fired, 99 times out of 100, the writing was on the wall. You were sucking or it was a bad fit. So what are you upset about? It's like, come on.
Yeah, definitely. So I got a funny story real quick about taking, like being impeccable with your word with yourself. So I never did an Ironman or even a half Ironman.
Congratulations.
But I did dabble in some sprint triathlons. And I don't know.
Captex Tri?
I did that one.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff out there in Austin. I announced that one year.
Oh, wow.
There's so many, how many thousands of people do that? It's one of the biggest races in the world. It's insane.
I don't know, but...
Yeah, the bike racks go for like 3/4 of a mile. Seriously.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I never wrecked, so at least I got that going for me. But what finally made me quit triathlon, I probably did, I don't know, maybe like 10. And, I'm a decent runner, so, I had that going for me, and the bike wasn't too hard to transition from running, but I was a terrible swimmer. And I should have known it from the first triathlon that I did. So the first triathlon I did, I had this coworker, and she did them, and she was like, oh yeah, you should do this, you're a runner, this would be great, So I go to this triathlon, and she's in it. And at the time I was in the elite age group, right, the whatever, 18 to 35 or whatever. So we went first, and then the 18 to 35 women went after us. And they were going to start, like 7 minutes after us or whatever to give us time to get out of the water. And when I got out of the water, the women had already caught up to me, right? So I should have known that about them. But fast forward to like 10 triathlons later, I'm talking to this guy. This one was in Albany, Oregon. I was talking to this guy beforehand, and the guy happened to have one arm, right? So he noticed it, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. You can compete in these things with one arm, blah, blah, blah.
He also beat you in the swim.
He also beat me in the swim. So I'm getting out of the water, and I see this guy about 50 yards in front of me, and I'm like, all right, one armed man beats me in the swim. Last triathlon, I'm done.
The ratings on the wall. Good for him, though. My gosh.
Great guy.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We've gotten into the heavy theoretical part of the show, so maybe we should turn the corner a little. And I think what you're good at is helping people, including me. You're like the encyclopedic resource for all the thing that's going on, and then dive in there, extract something, and share the message. So maybe we should give the listener viewer some helpful, practical tips of high impact things that they can do that maybe they might not be looking at right now. And I know we've been talking a lot about this, we've been talking a lot about the EMF thing, the EMF scare. I'm kind of freaked out about it because of the lack of full understanding of potential negative impact. And then the blue light really seems like it's taking off and getting widely accepted and embraced as a problem that we can do something about so easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of something else that goes in that same list, like the estrogenic compounds in the environment is now something that's on my checklist to worry about. Oof.
Well, I think you and I've talked about this a little bit offline. I think the key to the whole thing is what Bruce Lipton says is like, if you believe it's a problem, it certainly is a problem.
That one's brutal, huh? I mean, let's sit there for a second, because that one slapped me in the face. He was talking to Luke Story, Lifestyles podcast, and he's like calling out the host, who's a real health enthusiast, biohacker of note, and is up on everything and making his environment as sanitized as possible and healthy. And he said, yeah, that's your problem, is you're worried about that cell tower that's a block away from your house. And oh my gosh, I'm seeing myself and my proclivities and my peculiarities, such as that desperate need to get optimum sleep every night. And that goes back to my triathlon days, because when you're an athlete, that's all you're all about, is you got to deliver some workouts, and you better get impeccable sleep, because if you're staying up late or screwing around with that, then you're not all about, peak performance. And so I'm long since departed from the athletic circuit, where I like to tell the audiences I was asleep for half my life when I was an athlete. I slept 10 hours a night, 2-hour nap every afternoon without fail. And if I missed a little bit of that nap, I would feel off on my swim workout that night, and I'd complain about it, and I'd just be this strict devotion to incredible sleeping habits. Okay, so now how well do I roll with the punches if I get a crappy night's sleep or I'm traveling through time zones? Probably not as well as, for example, Mia Moore, who has no complaints and will stay up late working and getting stuff done until midnight, pop up at 6 a.m. like it's nothing. And the lack of negativity, the lack of complaining or even observing that to be a problem, she says, I feel rested, I feel fine. Why should we even talk about it more? I'm like, I guess you're dialed in, because I went to sleep from 10:45 to 6:48, and I feel like I need 15 more minutes of sleep. I can't get up. Hey man, help me out.
Well, I think there's a lot to believing that you're getting enough, or that, and part of that is just being in touch with your body, right? I mean, if you are in fact in touch with your body and you feel like you need more sleep, well, maybe you do. And then the flip side of that also is something that Logan Schwartz told me when I first started getting into all this stuff. He was telling me, oh yeah, you need to change your diet, you need to take cold showers, you need to, all this stuff, right? And like every day it was a new thing on the list that I need to be doing. And he was like, how much sleep are you getting, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I only need 5 or 6 hours, I'm good. And he's like, no, you need a lot more sleep than that. And I'm like, no, I feel great, I feel fine. And he's
Really?
like,
wow.
He's like, no, you think you feel great. You don't even know what great is, because you haven't experienced it, right? So maybe there's some truth to that, and like we started the show with, humans have a great propensity to fool ourselves if we want to. But at the same time, I think you can. I think so in Mia Moore example particularly, if you are doing something in life that you love, that energizes you, that you want and crave to stay up late to finish because it's your passion and you just love it, maybe you're getting, you're energizing yourself in a way that is so helpful that maybe you don't need as much sleep. By the same token, I have a lot of friends who are yogis, yoga teachers, and they are big into meditation, right? And I know of several people that get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to meditate, because 4 o'clock in the morning is supposed to coincide with the time that your pineal gland makes the most melatonin, so that you can get into the most deep meditative state while you have the most melatonin. And there's actually research to show that when you are meditating in this state with high melatonin, because you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning because you're so devoted, that the rejuvenation and rebuilding that happens in your body is actually greater than it is when you're asleep.
Wow.
Yeah. I started talking to one of my friends who's a Kundalini yoga teacher about this, and because I'm coming from the same place you are. I'm like, she's telling me that she gets, that she stays up till 11 o'clock at night doing all this, family stuff and whatnot, preparing for the next day, and then she gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, you need more sleep than that. I'm worried about you. You got to get up and see the sunrise, and you got to go to bed early, and all the stuff that we teach in primal philosophy. And she started citing some of this research, and I looked it up, and that's the case.
Wow, it reminds me, I was talking to Mark Sisson the other day. He was about to do a podcast with Dave Asprey, bulletproof guy who's positioning himself as the ultimate biohacker and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars testing all the latest, greatest things and inventing things and touting this one day and touting that next day, and everything's driven toward optimizing longevity and health and peak performance. But everything's quantified and measured, and there's machinery involved and a high expensive equipment and tracking. We're so into in the progressive health scene, the tracking of your blood values and your macronutrients, and of course your training and your workout performance. And then Sisson's coming into it from more and more over time, just the non-quantified self, he calls himself. Mm-hmm. And everything's based on, hey, do I wake up in the morning and do I feel okay? And so if you think about back to that sleep example, and wherever your beliefs lie, do you feel great or not? And what can you do about that? And if you have negative energy in your life and toxic relationship dynamics and things that are interfering with your ability to get a restful, restorative night's sleep, or maybe wussy self-limiting beliefs are one of the things on the list that's kind of in your way of just going with the flow and attacking the day for all that you can enjoy and experience and be in a giving position for the planet. So I think we can do it without the wires and the plugins and the charting and the graphing. But that control tower of your own belief system and your thoughts, and whether you're suffering from the disease state of FOMO, fear of missing out, or FOQ, you know what FOQ is?
No.
FOKU, fear of keeping up.
Oh, okay.
FOQ too.
Yeah.
That stuff will destroy you on so many levels, whether you're in a sleep chamber with an IV coming in with recovery fluid overnight. It can override all that stuff. Yeah, and this brings it back to trying to live consciously and mindfully, and being in touch with how you really feel and whatnot. So I want to bring up something that I thought about a while back that I haven't discussed with anybody, but I think there might be something to it. So it's a scoop from Dude Spellings on the podcast.
So we all know that the hormetic adaptive response from things like the
cold plunge, which you're going to do later,
the cold plunge, or
sauna,
or even the phytates in plants, or whatever, right? A lot of these hormetic stressors provide just enough stress that it actually makes us stronger. And that's really how the human organism works, right? If we're challenged just enough, we get stronger, right? If you're challenged too much, you get crushed. And so I had this thought about the EMFs. What if the way to adapt to them in our modern life is that you cannot eliminate them, right? So you need to be able to withstand them. And so if you are devoted to this lifestyle where you're like EMF proofing your house, you got lead in your sheetrock to block the EMFs from the self towers, and you don't let people turn on their phone when they come inside. And
what's up, Liver King?
Yeah, you don't have any Wi-Fi.
Oh, that guy's so dialed. No cell phones, no Wi-Fi, 50-foot Ethernet cables wherever you want in the house to grab one and plug in. Sleeping on the floor, and then every light bulb is that beautiful orange hue that's just the calming.
He's the boss.
Dialed in, yeah.
But my thought was, if you have no exposure, then maybe you're not getting a hormetic response that you need to be able to adapt to the modern world. Like maybe you'd be better off.
You'd be more sensitive when you get on that jet,
right? And
you're fried from a 2-hour flight.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, that kind of helps me with my belief that I don't have to eliminate them entirely, right? And I just need to pay attention to how I'm feeling and do the best I can.
What do you think about applying that example of the hormetic stressor to diet with the carnivore premise that the only reason we're eating plants is that, well, they were survival foods. They're not necessary for human survival now. And in fact, that we're getting these these brief stressors, but they're not brief because we're having plants all the time and having plant-based diet, thinking that's the healthiest. How do you line that up? It's a pretty radical notion, but it's very compelling to think about.
I think there's something to it, and I don't think, if you really ponder it, I don't think it's that radical, right? So if you, let's take the famous Marxist and Primal big ass salad, right? I'm like, love the big ass salad, man. I would go to Whole Foods and make, like, I would go to the like the chef area and say, yeah, I'm gonna need one of your great big metal bowls because I'm gonna make this gigantic salad. It's gonna be about 2.5 pounds. And I love it, right? But if you think about what our hunter-gatherers are doing, would they ever hunt or gather 2.5 pounds of lettuce and chard and olive oil, which they wouldn't even have access to, and radishes and broccoli? No, it's like you're never going to spend. How long would it take to gather all that stuff? Like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours? Like, you're never gonna.
It's not that many calories either.
No,
I mean,
especially if you don't add the olive oil.
Right.
So I think that we were probably never designed to eat that quantity of vegetables, and especially if you're doing something like a green smoothie. Now you're basically doing the exact same thing with the vegetables that people do with fruit juice, right? So if you're going to drink a 20-ounce glass of apple juice, like that's the equivalent of like whatever it is, like 6, 7, 8 apples, right? You can't do that. You can't eat 6 or 7 apples.
You have a stomach ache.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And by the same token, you know, if you're going to make your 20-ounce green smoothie with kale and spinach and, you know, radishes, whatever else you're going to put in there, you know, to get the equivalent level of phytates and proteins that like, I forget what the, not gluten because that's not in those things, but
the oxalates and the lectins and the things that are these are poisonous agents in plants,
right,
that we ingest every day in the name of health. And in fact, what happens is it stimulates an antioxidant defense mechanism in the liver, and then we get this antioxidant benefit from eating the broccoli or the kale in the smoothie. But it's, you know, this is new understanding for me to take it backwards, because I just didn't make that connection that we're ingesting the plant toxin and responding with an antioxidant defense, and therefore strengthening our antioxidant defense systems.
Right, but
it's arguably unnecessary.
Right, but you know, 10,000 years ago, you're going to eat, you know, like maybe one small plant of broccoli that you find, right, or whatever it is. You're not going to put, you know, whatever 3 pounds of it in a blender and blend it all up into a consumable form that's going to give you, you know, 30 times the amount of lectins and stuff that we were never designed. You know, the lectins are there to as a defense, as a small poison for us, so that we don't eat the entire plant and cause it to go extinct, right? I mean, it's there to protect the planet. And now we're basically distilling those lectins and other antioxidant proteins and stuff to cause a much bigger reaction in our body than.
Yeah, we're soaking, sprouting, fermenting, cooking. We're doing all this crazy, elaborate preparation mechanism so that we can digest it better. But yeah, taking those few steps backward and listening to Paul Saladino and Sean Baker make that case, like, you don't need to eat your salad, your broccoli, your super green smoothie, and it's kind of a slap in the face, because that's at least the one thing that we could agree upon with Rip Esselstyn, the plant-based whole movement there, and then the primal paleo, keto, the whole other side of the equation, saying that animals and high-fat foods are okay, and now everything's called into question.
I tell you one thing that I realized a while back, I never really put it together until just now, is, you know, before I lost all my weight and started on the Primal Path.
Listen to Dude's other show, Primal Blueprint podcast, Get Over Yourself podcast. I think we talked about it.
Yeah. But you know, I was about 50 pounds heavier, and
That's 2 25-pound weight vests, dude.
Yeah.
I have one. It kind of sucks. I hardly ever use it because none of the workouts are fun.
Yeah.
Because I got 25-pound weight vest on.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah, and when I first started speed golfing, that's how much I weighed.
That's like carrying 27 clubs instead of 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, or 50 clubs.
But point is, I've always loved a big salad, right? And so even when I was heavy, I was eating this great big salad, and I realized at some point, like, this great big salad isn't helping me get to the weight that I want, right? And back then I thought, it's probably the amount of calories, right? Because the bigger the salad, the more olive oil you got to use to,
cover it.
Yeah, and so I did a calculation and found out, oh wow, these salads that I'm making are like whatever they were, I can't remember, but 1,500 calories, like a lot of calories. And so I started scaling back the size of my salad to help with the weight, but maybe part of the issue was the inflammation that I was getting from the phytates and the lectins. Who knows?
The inflammation causing some disturbance with healthy fat metabolism, and we know that to be the case. So inflammation coming from wherever, and if the hormetic stressors are beyond that healthy balance point and increasing too much. And I've never really heard anyone present it just the way you did. I think that was interesting, that it's the quantity that could be causing the big problems, such as the nutrient-dense smoothie, as demonstrated by Rhonda Patrick with 1 million videos on YouTube where she's jamming this stuff into the blender. And I never realized you could blend everything up and then jam more stuff in. I'm not as smart as her. And I'm like, wow, she stuffed the entire giant blender full of raw kale and then blended it up, and now it's down. And now you can put a whole bunch of raw chard in there, and a tomato, and an apple, and a carrot. Yeah. Oh, I see, you blend it in sections, and then you're drinking this incredible density of plant matter, which ancestrally makes sense. We've never had that. In contrast, I'm thinking, if we were out there hunting for 4 days and we came across the woolly mammoth, Sean Baker's famous quote, he goes, look, you take down a prehistoric woolly mammoth, that's 3 million calories. So an average hunter-gatherer band of, let's say, 30 people, they're feasting for months and months on end without having to go pick a single berry.
Right.
And it was sort of a pop-off comment from a big guy who's got big muscles and eats steak all day, but it's like, wait a second. There's a very bright and well-researched and studied guy, and that message that these are obligatory foods or survival foods is a huge wake-up call for me, because I'm trying to be open-minded, critical thinking, and thinking, wow, so we're dosing ourselves with these massive ingestion of plants. Tough to reconcile ancestrally. However, I didn't even finish my sentence. Like, what, you go and kill the mammoth, or if you were to find a nest of eggs and you're hungry, you're going to eat 8 of those or whatever until you're passed out on the ground, because it's a matter of life or death. So when we know that we've gorged on animal foods to the extreme, especially heading into winter hibernation time, that's why we're so good at storing body fat, is because we need that storage mechanism.
Yeah. So let's let me play devil's advocate real quick with the nutrient in smoothie. So I guess you could argue that our food is so nutrient deficient today that in order to get the same nutrients, you need more of it.
Right.
So
you gotta keep slamming everything. And also the gut microbiome comes in here, where we're supposed to eat this varied and diverse plant matter diet, so you can get, and the green foods help with, the red foods help with prostate cancer, and the orange and yellow foods help with ocular health, and everything's all in these categories, and we see headline stories in the newspaper how we got to go find all this stuff to eat. And potentially, because we're choosing all these crazy foods all over the place, we need a really diverse gut microbiome to process that stuff. But what about if you were hardcore nose-to-tail carnivore? Again, just for argument's sake, Brian McAndrew, our filmmaker, audio engineer, really a great enthusiast of keto and carnivore. We have a cookbook coming out, Keto Cooking for Cool Dudes, and Carnivore Cooking for Cool Dudes, with great recipes for dudes that want to get into this.
Nice.
He said, the desert is a thriving microbiome as well. It's got far fewer plants and animals than the rainforest, but is just as healthy because the cactus are living and the boll weevils and the animals underground. And so what if you didn't need this crazy diverse microbiome that you constantly had to nurture with 4 different kinds of probiotics and all this different plant matter because you were eating only the most nutrient dense foods on earth that have, created healing stories and turnarounds from people suffering from chronic inflammatory and autoimmune conditions.
I love the analogy of the desert versus the rainforest, and I'm going to use it to go in the next direction of eating locally, right? So,
oh, nice.
So what was really happening with our ancestors is that no matter where they were, right, they were eating locally. So if you're an Inuit, you're eating.
Are you sure about that?
there was no Amazon Prime. So if you're an Inuit, you're eating lots of whatever, reindeer and seal and
the stomach lining of the whale provided a huge dose of vitamin C because people were concerned about the Inuits not getting enough vitamin C. I just heard Master John say that. So one of the knocks against the nose to tail carnivore strategy is you're maybe deficient on some of these vitamins. But
have you heard?
They found a way to get it.
Have you heard Finney explain the story of I forget his first name, but Stephenson in the
the Arctic Explorer?
Yeah. So I'll give you a link you can put in the show notes. But so this guy Stephenson wanted to go look for the British expedition that was trying to find the Northwest Passage, and ended up basically everyone dying up in the Canadian archipelago or whatever up there. And dozens of people had gone to go look for him before. I don't know about dozens, but several people had gone to look for this expedition beforehand. And their approach was that, well, it's the Arctic. You're gonna have to carry all of our provisions with us, and so you're gonna have these giant sleds of, like 2 tons of food so that we can spend a month out there looking, right? And so Stephenson comes along and he's like, no, you don't need to do that. You just need to hire an Inuit to teach you how to hunt up there.
Nice.
And so he goes up there to the Inuit and he goes, eats like the Inuit eat. He's able to stay up there for like 3 months, right? Or maybe even more. But he got back and he ended up finding, the wreckage and the last camp of the people that were missing. But he gets back and everybody was like, no, we don't believe you because you can't stay out there that long without limes and this other things that would prevent scurvy.
Limes.
Yeah, well, that's called the pirates were limeys, right? Because they ate limes on the ships crossing the Atlantic to keep them from getting scurvy. And he's like, no, I just ate like the Inuit eat, and you get all the nutrition you need, right? And Finney's big line when explaining this is that he was writing his dissertation about fat adaptation like in 1969 or whatever, and thought he had discovered this big thing about fat adaptation and the low carb flu. You feel bad for a couple weeks until you become fat adapted. And this guy Stephenson writes about it in like 1890. Like, if you eat like the Inuit, you feel terrible for 2 weeks, but then that soon passes and you have all the energy you need.
Just busting out ketones, looking for the forgotten ship.
But the really cool thing is that nobody believed him when he got back, and so they put him in Bellevue Hospital in New York and issued a challenge. Or I guess he told them, he's like, well, I'll do, you can lock me up and monitor what I eat so I can prove it to you, right? So they locked him in Bellevue Hospital for a year.
A year? And
he only ate the animal products that he asked for, right? Which was nose to tail. He's eating organ meats and everything.
He's getting it flown in from Amazon Prime from the Arctic.
I don't know how they were getting it, but he asked.
It's just send him on a shopping list. Go down to New York City and find some sardines for me or whatever.
Well, in the turn of the 19th to 20th century, probably everyone knew how to hunt, right? So it's probably not hard to get elk meat or whatever. But the point is, they were doing all the measurements of things that they could measure at that time, and he never got scurvy or any of the other diseases that they predicted, and they wrote down exactly what he ate, and it was lots and lots of of animal meat and organ meat and bone broth.
That is cool. That's like Dr. Cahill's experiments at Harvard, which is some of still the best reference research for the ketogenic diet from back in the 60s, because he basically starved these people for, I think it was 40 days, and tracked their glucose, insulin, and ketone levels. And like, you can't do that today because no one would comply. But you go back into the annals and find this great research about what's possible.
Is he the guy that got these people in ketosis and starved them to the point, and gave them blood glucose lowering meds while they're in ketosis? Have you heard about this?
I'm not sure if that was the same guy, but
I ran across this. I can't remember what video it was. I'll have to look it up and send it to you. But they wanted to, and of course, just like the experiment that you mentioned, you couldn't do this today. This was back in the 50s or 60s before.
It probably was then. It's Dr. George Cahill at Harvard. Yeah.
But they put people on a ketogenic diet, and then they gave them medicine to lower their blood sugar to 30 to see how low they could get it before it started inducing, cognitive effects is what they thought. And the podcast I was listening to that mentioned this was pointing out, like, you don't need glucose for the brain like we think, because they did this experiment and people's blood sugar was 30 and they were still cognitively aware and everything because they had enough ketones to
Yeah, my understanding is the average person walking around is virtually 100% of the brain's energy is coming from glucose. Maybe some small percentages first thing in the morning from ketones. Now it's known that lactate is burned by the brain, but it can't burn fat. So you're basically entirely reliant on glucose, and that's why your blood sugar fluctuations are so sensitive in the brain, and you conk out so easily if you miss a single meal, if you're carb dependent. And then I understand that a really hardcore ketogenic eater can transition all the way over to a maximum adaptation of like 2/3 ketones and 1/3 glucose. So
and all the glucose can be provided by gluconeogenesis.
Right. So like the brain burns about 150 grams of glucose per day, glucose and or ketones. So if you get 2/3 keto adapted, you're left with only 50 grams a day that you need in a carbohydrate. And even a strict ketogenic eater is probably going to have trickling in somewhere around 50 grams a day, maybe 20 or 30. And then of course you can make up that and then some with gluconeogenesis. So that's
like they proved in the faster study, where they got the day after these guys
they were reloaded. Yeah, incredible. Right. So summarize that quickly.
So Dr. Volek did a study of 6 keto adapted ultra runners and 6 carb dependent ultra runners, and one of the things that they found was that the day after they did a 3-hour run on the treadmill, the ketogenic athletes who were not eating carbs had perfectly replenished glycogen the next day.
It's a 3-hour depleting run to where most everybody in the endurance scene for the past 60 years, right, would need to go over to Jamba Juice really quickly, or sometime in the next few hours. Yeah. You're depleted. You do a 3-hour run, you're going to be depleted, almost whoever you are. Yeah. And they just sent them home, and they came back with full glycogen stores.
Yeah. And this was the dogma that I heard, and I'm sure you heard too. Is like, after your run, even a workout, right? If you did a 2-hour workout, you have to go eat pasta and sweet potatoes and all this carb heavy stuff to replenish your glycogen so that you can get up the next day and be ready to hammer it again.
Yeah, we called it the window of opportunity. I used to sell
the golden window
supplements. Yeah, and that was in the hour following the workout. That's when your muscles are most receptive to glycogen reloading, and then it kind of shuts off. Arguably, maybe the stress response is kicking in. If you're carb dependent, you don't get food. So it's not super healthy. And those of you listening this is your first podcast you've ever listened to in this sort of topic, and then you're going to go start fasting and doing workouts and not eating after, like dude Spellings after he climbed out of the Grand Canyon, you're probably going to go right over into fight or flight and start making glucose from lean muscle tissue or whatever. and have a net adverse impact because you're increasing the stress impact of the workout because you're not fat adapted.
Yeah, this is where all of the studies that say that glucose or carbs are the best fuel, this is the mistake that they make, right? Is they grab people off the street who, like you were saying, can't go a couple hours without refilling on carbs, and they do this, study to test what fuel is better, and the study lasts for a week, and we know now, like what I just said with Stephenson, it takes 2 or 3 weeks to overcome this feeling of lethargy. If you do the tests or the study under those conditions, yes, the people who are dependent on carbs because they can't burn fat are going to perform poorly in your study.
Right. And all the exercise physiology studies where they take these subjects that are untrained or maybe moderately fit, a lot of times they're college students because those dudes are always up for a study, and then they slam them with 6 weeks of high intensity training, they're going to get more fit than someone who's jogging and doing low intensity stuff because it's a short-term observation. And so we've been told that these exhaustive workouts that form the foundation of many fitness programs that are super popular today, like spinning. I worked for 2 years for the company that delivered spinning to the world, Johnny G, the first indoor exercise program. And we were trying to convince people to slow down and just go to class and enjoy the music and do some breathing and have a low stress workout, because the fitness scene wants loud music, kick-ass, super motivated, intense instructors getting you to push it hard and sprint to the finish like you're in the Tour de France, and then come back and do it again the next day and the next day. And you're going to get fitter for a short period of time. It's like throwing the spaghetti on the fridge, and anything that sticks is going to help. And then you're going to destroy yourself predictably if your exercise program is too stressful.
Yeah.
But a study can be organized by well-meaning, highly trained scientists to deliver a result that doesn't apply well when you put it in the context of real life.
Yeah, another thing to consider too with a study like that, where it's college students, is now that you and I are a little older, you can appreciate
anything works for a college student.
If you're 20, it doesn't matter what workout you do, you're gonna get results.
Yeah. Have you heard of this Carol Fit bike? CAROL. It's called for cardiovascular optimized logic, and it's a smart exercise bicycle powered by artificial intelligence, and it learns your fitness level and applies this amount of resistance to get you to sprint at just the right amount to get this maximum intensity workout in a short time. So they're touting this 8-minute workout.
Oh wow!
Where you warm up a few minutes, you sprint all out for 20 seconds, you recover a little bit, you do another sprint for 20 seconds, cool down, and you're done. And this type of protocol has shown, with a lot of great respected research for years and years, some of it's old, that you can get in shape really quickly without that downside risk of those exhaustive, prolonged workouts, because you're delivering that maximum intensity effort, which has such a profound impact on metabolism for hours and hours afterward. You're basically turbocharging fat burning, you're getting the adaptive hormones into the bloodstream, and then because you're only doing 2 sprints and the workout's not that long, you get off and go about your day, and you're not in that exhausted, fatigued, depleted state. That's such a common problem for the average fitness enthusiast.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that fitness profile kind of fits what our ancestors would have been doing with hunting, right? They're not, they're either going to be tracking an animal over many hours,
walking around, moving at a comfortable pace,
because they're smart enough to know that they can't outrun a gazelle, right? So you have to do, what is that type of hunting called?
Persistence hunting.
Persistence hunting, yeah.
They use their brain basically.
Yeah. Or you're going to be hunting something like a pheasant.
Rocky was hunting the chicken, right?
Where you're going to be sprinting for 20 seconds to catch it, and that's it.
Yeah, he finally caught the chicken. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good homage to primal training right there.
Right there, man.
The 1980 Rocky movie.
Yeah, best picture, 1976,
Oh,
Rocky 1.
76,
Yeah,
wow.
the raw eggs, which has now come back in vogue, as long as they're from pasture-raised local farms.
Right.
I don't know where Rock was getting his eggs, but maybe the eggs were more nutritious in 76, arguably.
Maybe he's getting them from the chickens he was
was.
chasing.
Yeah, exactly. Forcing them to lay an egg. Oh, dude, we got into a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do another show about the blue light and getting deep into that, and I've connected with some interesting interview subjects, people that are touting the the EMF and the blue light and getting yourself protected from technology. But that one-liner, probably the most important thing to say about it is do the best you can. Don't worry about it too much.
Yeah. So when we come back and we want to talk about this on another podcast, I can get into what I hear Jack Cruz has done at his longevity farm, which he's obsessed with eliminating the non-native EMF, and I know somebody that went down there and took note of exactly what he did and his little compound down there to mitigate the EMF.
Wow. There's trendsetters out there, and then for the rest of us living busy, ordinary life, why don't you give me like a top 5 of life-changing health habits that are doable and easy to throw down right away after listening to the show?
All right. No processed or packaged food. That's super easy. Well, I say it's super easy, but
it's
simple, not easy.
It's a direct suggestion, right?
Yeah.
There's no nuance there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That includes a lot of the crap at Whole Foods Market. Sorry, I know you're an awesome local, and they've done a great thing, and they have a lot of good stuff, but they go to their the hot bar, and there's canola oil in 2/3 of the stuff.
At least 2/3, yeah.
I don't feel like you have a lot of pull in Austin anymore.
No.
What is this? you grew up there. You saw everything come in, the skyscrapers and all that. But do you know why there's a good segment of diet nutrition experts, food manufacturers that think canola oil is still okay, when you have other people, Dr. Kate Shanahan comes to mind, and many other experts saying that these oxidized industrial oils are probably the worst thing you can consume on the planet?
Well, I think the gist of it is that it's a polyunsaturated fat as opposed to a saturated fat, and there's so many people out there still demonizing saturated fat. But I did want to note that John Mackey, the founder and CEO of Whole Foods, has a book called The Whole Foods Diet, and in his book it says to avoid canola oil. Yeah, and I actually
John, if you're watching the show,
get with it, buddy.
We love you, man. If he's overall net positive for the planet, by
100%.
launching that market and getting it all over America, but come straight, brother.
Yeah, I as far as I can tell, it's about cost, because it probably is so much cheaper.
I understand that's true in the restaurants, and I've been at the finer restaurants and saying, "Is this olive oil that you're bringing me?" "Oh, it's a blend." Let me go back and ask, and they come back, "It's a blend of olive and canola." What the heck? I mean, the olive oil is cheap enough at Costco.
So here's another tip. We're getting derailed from our top 5.
Right. So no processed foods, number 1.
Yeah, and on that note, if you're trying to avoid canola, you really have to go deep with your efforts here. So like you were saying, you go to a fine restaurant and they are serving an olive oil canola blend. I went to a restaurant one time and asked for olive oil and vinegar for my salad, and they bring me the little, thing with the glass containers, and the oil is like as yellow as these microphones, and I'm like, that's not olive oil. And they're like, "Oh, no, it says on the package it's olive oil." And I'm like, "Okay, bring me the package, please." And so they go bring out this jug, like a 2-gallon jug, industrial size, and it says olive oil blend.
Oh, mercy.
Right, and so then you look at the back of it that has the ingredients, it's like olive oil, canola oil, and I tell them, this is not olive oil.
I mean, how can you even fault them? I mean, there's a busy, hard-working food
100%.
orderer, person, waitress, and they're messing with you right on the label.
Yeah, and they probably go back to the stock shelf and they look and it says olive oil. Done, good.
I consumed Paul Newman's red wine and olive oil dressing for years and years, my favorite.
And it has canola?
Yeah, and it's on the back, not even. It says there's olive oil in it, but there's also, it says
And or.
Yeah. And I'm like, what could the and or mean except that they're going to the commodity brokers, like on trading places, and buying whatever's on special. Literally, they're just buying whatever shit they can get for that production run where they get to write and or on the label.
Yep. Yeah. All right, so back to our top 5. So number 1, avoid processed foods. Number 2, go to bed early enough to get restful sleep. And along with that, I would say adjust your environment to help you get restful sleep, right? So make your bedroom dark, get the electronics out of your bedroom, keep your house cool.
Oh man, my chili pad, I just got it. I got to put a plug in. It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah, if you've never heard of chili pad, look it up. And it's a thing you apply right to your mattress. You put the sheet over it, the cold water runs through, and you can actually program both sides of the bed. So you and your partner, if you sleep at a different temperature, which is so common, you can program when it'll start to cool off. So you want to get into a cold bed because lower body temperature facilitates good sleep. And then in the morning, you can program the temperature to rise so you get your butt out of bed.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty interesting.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So real.
So yeah,
quick.
go to sleep at a good time.
Well, real quick counter opinion there. So
It's a plug-in device. Oh no.
no. So the reason that the marketing behind the chili pad is that your body temperature should be lower when you're going to sleep, and I would say if you're that should happen naturally.
Right.
And if your body temperature isn't, if you need this artificial device to make your body temperature lower, maybe you might want to look at thyroid function or something that, why isn't your body temperature going lower on its own?
Have you been blasting your eyeballs with too much artificial light so that you still think it's daytime?
Or that?
Yeah.
Yes. So all that for the sleep, and then I would say number 3, get sun exposure, especially early morning sun exposure, because we know that the light from the sun, the full spectrum light, not the indoor light, is what resets our hormones and creates a proper hormone cascade that is going to really serve you for the entire day and set the health for your entire body for the whole day.
That includes a glass window of a car or a house is not good enough.
Correct.
You have to get straight eyeballs. You got me stopping wearing sunglasses, you bastard. I think about you every day. And when I finally get to squinty point, I put them on. But dude said, hey, don't wear sunglasses because you want to absorb that nice strong light source during the day and counter that with the nice dark sleeping period.
Yeah, I should follow up with that with a comment that I recently made on one of the Primal Facebook groups. Somebody was asking the same question and mentioned that they had blue eyes, which you also have. And I put a caveat in there that, if your ancestry gave you blue eyes and you're Northern European, where there was not really bright direct sun. So if you have blue eyes and you live in a southern latitude, maybe Florida, Southern California, Arizona, or South Texas,
don't play speed golf when it's 99 degrees out. Oh, okay.
That too. But don't, the dose makes the poison, right? So,
Right.
So you need, if you live in one of those southern areas where, and you have blue eyes, you need some natural sunlight exposure on your eyes, but don't overdo it and get to the point where you're putting yourself at risk for some negative effects from the sun.
Good, yeah. That's 2.
No, we got
That's 3.
We got processed
Sunlight,
food,
sleep, sunlight.
exercise. I would say, get adequate exercise, not too much, not too little. And you'd probably be surprised how little you need to actually stay fit and ready for most adult lives.
Oh, I mean, this Carol bike is targeted at the novice as well as a fitness enthusiast, but people scoff at that comment that you can get a great workout in 8 minutes, perhaps better than your crazy 40-minute sweat session on a different kind of bike that's become popular in an exercise class setting. But the science is there, and the elite athletes have known this for a long time. The great sprinters of the planet, Charlie Francis, one of the greatest sprint coaches ever, he would have his athletes rest for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes between sprints, so that sprint could be of exceptionally high quality with complete recovery time afterward, so you wouldn't traumatize the body with a workout that was too strenuous. And then we have regular people putting themselves in a gym environment and getting trashed. That's why you said not too much, not too little. The excessive exercise problem is brutal today, and there's so many well-meaning people. We can put aside the dumbass endurance athletes that are going too hard and they know it and they can't, they're, whatever their reason is. All right, go have yourself a nice life. But that positive energy person that signs up for a gym class trying to get fit and healthy and gets brutalized by the system, by the conventional approach, that's heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, and then I would also add that there's that mindset creates a barrier to entry, because people think, oh, well, I can't keep up with the CrossFit guy that's got an 8-pack and can bench press 350 pounds and do 6 handstand push-ups and all this stuff. So what's the point of me going over there if I can't do all that stuff? And the reality is like, if you are that person that's stuck in the matrix and you're not really doing anything and you're barely making your life work with your 90-minute commute each way and all this stuff, walking after dinner is probably going to improve your life. And I mentioned to you before we got on the podcast about all the stress I have going on with divorce and selling our house and moving and starting a new job and all this stuff. And I really cut back my workouts. And one of the things that I added with my new job on the 12th floor of this office building is I just take the stairs up in the morning and take the stairs up from lunch. And you know what? It's better than nothing.
Oh, if 12's too much, get the frick off at 8 and go forward then. Yeah, no excuses. Excellent. Yeah.
And for me, having I ran the Grand Canyon in May, and I was doing a lot of training up to then, and it was really kind of a stretch for me since my divorce kind of started happening before then. It was a stressor to maintain the workout I needed in order to cross the Grand Canyon 50 miles and 20,000 vertical feet.
With no food.
With no food.
This dude, unbelievable.
But
there's a whole show on that, so go listen to the show. I think it might have been titled something about crossing Grand Canyon, but just quickly, you did the double crossing, about 50 miles?
49 miles on my watch.
So South Rim, down to the bottom, up to North Rim, down to the bottom, up to South Rim. And then at the finish, you and your group had a stack of pizzas there for everyone to celebrate, but you were doing this experiment to do it fasted. So tell me how that all went down.
Well, just to be clear, I did end up needing some gels at mile 38 when I started up the South Rim.
Shame on you, lad.
Yeah.
So you had a couple gels, a couple hundred calories or something?
Yeah, I had 4 gels.
So your first ingestion of calories during the day, besides whatever aminos or something that inconsequential.
Yeah, I was taking electrolytes and beef liver from the Liver King.
Oh my gosh, ancestral supplements.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just real quick on that, the reason that I did that was that I theorized that this is what my whole experiment was about during the race, and then the other one after the race that you mentioned. But it wasn't even a race, just the event. But during the event, my hypothesis was that because we're fat adapted, maybe what we run out of isn't fuel, but it's the micronutrients, right? And so my whole plan was just to double up, super dose on micronutrients, including sodium, potassium, and magnesium for the electrolytes, and then beef liver, since it's the most nutrient-dense food on the planet for everything else. and it worked really well. And then if the last 12 miles had been flat, I would not have needed any supplementary carbs. If the last 12 miles had been flat, or my fat adaptation had been better.
Poor guy's, he's flogging himself for having to reach for a gel at 38-mile mark.
Yeah.
And not just an ordinary 38 miles, incredible climbing and yeah.
And so then at the end, I wanted to test out this theory about
the dude spellings theory. This is a breakthrough theory right here.
Well, I don't know if it's mine. I mean, it's.
I don't know too many people have tried this.
So instead of going quickly for the carb reload and the celebration meal, I wanted to fast to see if it would reduce inflammation and improve recovery afterwards. And I think it did. I had done rim to rim to rim 13 years prior when I was younger, and we don't remember how painful things were. That's why you have more than one baby. But why women have to agree to go through childbirth again. But as I recall, I think I was less sore the second time around.
13 years older.
Yeah, and 13 years older.
Incredible. I do think it's a revolutionary idea that's possibly going to take hold in the future with the Olympic and the professional athletes, because we know it's undisputed that the greatest anti-inflammatory diet known to mankind is fasting. Yeah. And the least oxidative stress comes when you're not eating. Artavani has said it for years. We're most human when we don't eat. We open up, Jack Kruse called it, we access ancient regenerative pathways or something like that when we're in a fasted state. And that's when we get rid of the damaged, dysfunctional cellular material. We do our cleanup job. And of course, what else do you need to do besides that after an extreme athletic event like that is to repair, regenerate, moderate inflammation. But we're slamming pizzas and root beer floats and hot fudge sundae because we have that free pass to restock glycogen, which we don't need to now because the faster study proved.
Right. And the other thing I would throw in there is one of the big arguments from guys like Sachin Panda, Dr. Sachin Panda, who does a lot of the circadian timing with meals research, where his big thing is that the time that you eat is more important than what you eat, because it contributes to setting your circadian clock. And one of the things he says is that when you eat late at night, your body is spending that energy digesting your food while you're asleep, rather than doing the work of rejuvenation and repair that's supposed to take place while you're sleeping. So if you finish the Grand Canyon at 9 o'clock at night and you want to go to bed, you want your body to be doing that rejuvenation and repair that you so desperately needed after that effort, rather than digesting the pizza.
Okay, you're forewarned now. Go try that at home, or don't try it at home, either one. But get highly fat adapted first.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll throw in, before I mention my fifth thing that we'll finally get to, I want to throw in one more thing about fat adaptation and stress and whatnot. So, like I mentioned briefly, the last 9 months of my life has been pretty stressful, and a lot of things have changed. So my routines have changed and whatnot, and I haven't adhered to the fasting schedule that I typically do. I still doing daily intermittent fasting over minimum 12 hours, usually probably more like 14 or 16. But I was doing a sort of bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, 24 to 48 hour fast. And with all the stress I had going on, that kind of went by the wayside. But I recently thought, I haven't done that in a few months. I should reintroduce that. And I thought, I wonder if I'm gonna have trouble since I haven't done it in a while. Maybe I'm not as fat adapted as I was. But I did 36 hours after probably like a 3-month hiatus, and it was still just as easy as it was before.
Wow.
Yeah. So number 5, I would say is mindfulness and just a real effort to live consciously. And I would throw in there breathing. which, you know, if you are aware of your breath, you're going to be aware of a lot more than just your breath.
Instant change in your body chemistry when you start commencing deep diaphragmatic breathing.
Yeah, even so for me during the day, what that looks like is remembering to breathe through my nose, right? Because it's so easy to get in a meeting or get into a frantic state because you got a deadline and just subconsciously kind of revert back to like the stressful habits that you used to have where you, oh, I need more oxygen. You know, like none of this is conscious, but I've definitely noticed myself in front of the computer mouth breathing because I've got this deadline in an hour and I'm got more work than I can do in an hour.
So, eat that clean food. Get some sun exposure. Sleep was next.
Yeah.
Then get some sun exposure.
Yeah.
Hand in hand. Number 4, get some exercise. Get off on the early elevator stop. Why don't you? And number 5.
Mindfulness, conscious
Oh
living.
yeah, I forgot. Dude Spelling's rocking it. Thank you so much for listening, watching on YouTube. All right, we wrap.
Nice.